Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast, interview your ideal clients, and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles, Director of Partnerships with Sweetfish Media. I am joined today by Max Altschuler. He is the VP of Marketing at Outreach.io. Max, how you doing today, man?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, great to have you on again. This is going to be another episode in our category creation series, and I'm really excited to talk to you about this today, Max. We're going to be talking about how to get people talking about your category. Before we get into that, I would love for you to share with your listeners a little bit about yourself, what you and the team at Outreach are up to these days. We've had you on this show way back in episode 153. A lot has changed. So what are you up to these days? Share a little bit about your background with our listeners.
Oh man, I don't even remember being on a show. I don't know how long ago that is, but that's awesome. Glad to hear I was on there doing way too many of these things. But this is an interesting topic. This is something that we're focused on big time right now. I think it is something that every SaaS company should be thinking about, that is changing or creating a market that has really like past product market fit and kind of pricing market fit, and is into that next stage of like validation into growth. And that's where we are. I mean, we're kind of well beyond that. We're really kicking into high gear. We've got some real competitors and a real category and a real space. So it's something we're really focused on, and it's quite fun to think through. It's like a game of 3D chess. You know, you're playing against multiple competitors, but you know, you're really just playing against yourself at the end of the day. So I'm a VP of marketing now at Outreach. I was the CEO of Sales Hacker, still am, but Sales Hacker was acquired by Outreach, leading publication and educational resource for all B2B salespeople. About 100, I think we're at like 105,000 subscribers now, 200 plus thousand monthly visitors, and now running marketing and outreach as well. So I've had a lot of kind of insider access into other SaaS companies over the past 5 years running Sales Hacker. So we worked with about 120 different sales and marketing vendors in the past year alone, ranging from the big ones who've already done this successfully, like Marketo, HubSpot, LinkedIn, Salesforce, Callidus, Adobe, DocuSign, all the way down to the up-and-comers and some of the ones that are, I think, doing it pretty successfully at an early stage, like Outreach, like Drift, like Gong, and some other companies in there. There's HighSpot and Showpad. There's Lean Data. There's quite a few companies who are capitalizing on this in a pretty big way. Terminus being another one.
Absolutely. And it was actually an interview with Keith Kroc from DocuSign on Anthony Kenneda's show from Gainsight, B2B Creatives, that really got James and I thinking about category creation, and our team here at Sweetfish thinking about category creation. And since then, we've been talking about it here in this series. So before we get into some of the ways that you think, Max, people can really lean into to get people talking about their category. As we were chatting offline, you mentioned something really interesting. You know, the category for outreach is sales engagement. And, you know, for HubSpot, that's inbound marketing. For Terminus, it's ABM. For Drift, it's conversational marketing. And you mentioned no matter who you are or the category that you're creating or trying to lead, you need to think about when is a category actually quote unquote created? Can you tell me your thoughts on that a little bit, man?
I think every category has to have, you have to have successful competitors, not just like a bunch of ankle biters, but ones that are actually starting to be successful. You want your competition. You want there to be competition. You want there to be a target addressable market, a TAM large enough to seed you and a bunch of other competitors, and not just seed them, but to you want to be in a category that there could be multiple billion-dollar companies in. And I think that's a really important part of starting your category creation strategies. Like, what is that category going to be that allows that? Like, if you go too granular, then it's not going to happen. If you go too broad, then you run into a lot of other different issues. So you want to make sure that you're playing in a space that has other competitors in it. I also don't think a category is ever really fully created. I think you're constantly creating it. You look at HubSpot and you look at inbound. I mean, yeah, there's a foundation there for inbound. People know what inbound is, but they're still doing a conference called Inbound and growing that conference. You're never fully done because the product, the features, what's possible is always changing. And so the category and the landscape are always changing. And if you're not adapting with it, then the category you created, somebody else is going to capitalize on in the future. That's where we feel like we are right now. I mean, we're building a brand new category, a category of sales engagement. So sales engagement is a category that we're building right now. And I bet you could talk to some vendors who are like, oh, well, we built we're a sales engagement platform. We've been building this forever. And I'm kind of like, why? Because you enabled email, because you enabled phone calls. Like, that isn't what a sales engagement platform is in the world of omnichannel. So back when you were only able to email or call, and a lot of this modern technology didn't exist, yeah, sure, like that worked, but that's not what a sales engagement platform is today in 2018. So the category is always growing, is always expanding. It's really never stopped being created. And for us, we're taking a fresh approach to modern sales, which is omnichannel. If you're only emailing or only calling or just utilizing those two, ways of getting in touch with someone, and you're doing it manually, well, it's a huge unfair advantage you're ceding to your competitors who are taking advantage of all these new channels and new technologies and automations to allow you to get more efficiency and really get to where buyers are going or want to be contacted better than ever before. So, in terms of the category creation side of that, yeah, I mean, Salesforce can make a case that they were in sales engagement, years ago, but it's not the sales engagement that we're building today. It's not innovative. It's not modern. And so that category is always being created. If HubSpot stopped creating that category right now, there would be competitors in 5 years that could take that throne from them, right? Like, they are the kings of inbound, right? But that doesn't mean that somebody can't come and take them out of it.
Yeah.
So it's always being created.
Yeah, that is a great point, Max. So as we transition into talking about getting people talking about your category, especially in the early days, as you're building the category, not so much kind of in the late stages of constantly redefining or updating the category, like we could point to with say HubSpot. You mentioned handling, analyst relations and PR in a certain way as you're building the category. What are some of the things that you've seen effective at some of the places you've been or some of the companies you've worked with to leverage those channels to get people talking about a new category that's being defined?
So when I first got into outreach, I knew we needed to make a big step in kind of capitalizing and really making sure we were king of this new category of sales engagement. And so what we did is I found the guy who owned salesengagement.com. He was a consultant in New York City, a sales consultant. And since we also own Sales Hacker, I was able to ask him some questions and understand, what would make him want to sell that domain name. And it really wasn't about money. It was about him being able to build his brand as a sales consultant, as a pretty new sales consultant. So we were able to give him some exposure and, a few things that we can do through Sales Hacker to put him in front of an audience of other practitioners in exchange for this domain. So it's actually really cheap for us to get the sales engagement domain. And then we had our lightning strike moment. So if you're, familiar with category creation and some of the best practices, you need to make sure you can have an opportunity or like a time, whether it's at a large industry conference or something like that, where you can make a point, make a statement.
Mm-hmm.
So our lightning strike moment came alongside Dreamforce. So the Monday of Dreamforce, we launched salesengagement.com on our domain with the book on sales engagement published by Wiley. So, just a pre-promotion of, hey, this book is coming soon. And then our sales engagement podcast. So you get a bunch of really fresh new content on sales engagement on the podcast. In the meantime, the book's coming out in March. And then we have our second lightning strike moment, which is basically the book comes out March 1st, and then our conference is March 10th. So we have this layered lightning strike around sales engagement. We're continuously building the podcast and our kind of stranglehold or dominance over the category itself. And we're leveraging sales engagement as a way to get people in to educate everybody else that's out there on sales engagement instead of making it an outreach thing. And what that does is it actually ends up expanding the funnel in a big way. We'll get to that in a second. The second thing that we did, though, instead of just launching salesengagement.com and writing the book and launching the podcast, the one thing you have to worry about is you have to make sure your competitors are playing in the same category as you. So the other thing that you always want to do is make sure that they can't change the category. So you need analysts to be talking about your category, to be helping you create that category for you. So before we did our lightning strike moment, our launch of salesengagement.com, we went to the Trust Radius and the G2 crowds and those peer review sites, the more popular ones that are being used in our industry, in the industries we're going after. And we went to a couple of the other big analysts like Topo and Serious Decisions and Forrester. And we said, hey, what are your plans for sales engagement? We see a bunch of stuff on sales acceleration and, email tracking and calling, but, we need you guys to start talking about this category. It's blowing up. A bunch of companies raising money in the space. Salesforce is getting involved. What are your plans? And I don't know if we talked them into it or not, but we ended up, G2 Crowd ended up launching sales engagement as a category right before Dreamforce. Trust Radius did the same. Topo came out with their definitive guide to sales engagement. Serious Decisions has a sales engagement analyst, gave us a quote. Forrester has a new sales engagement analyst. So now that we have the industry talking about it, the analysts talking about it, and helping us create the category, it'd be really hard for our competitors to say, "Oh, well, these guys are already king. Let's change the category." So, like what I said, it's a game of 3D chess. You're playing a lot of different angles to build a moat for yourself and build a bigger funnel. Right. And so, when I was alluding to the point of the funnel previously, if we just marketed outreach, then we only get people who are familiar with outreach. But if we market sales engagement, you actually cast a much wider net, offer them value and education, and then eventually pull them into the company or outreach funnel from your category. So your category acts as a bigger net or a bigger funnel. And I can't get into too much more about what we are planning to do, but that's like the background on the very public strategy we've launched to date.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way you guys layered the timing of that. Personally, I've enjoyed the sales engagement podcast itself. There's been, phenomenal content there. But like you said, widening the funnel as opposed to just talking about your brand, talking about, your product or service and the things that it executes, going a level up widens your ability to put out content, widens your funnel in the people who are interested in that content. We have this show, B2B Growth. We are a podcast agency at Sweetfish, but we don't have a podcast about podcasting. We have a podcast about B2B sales and marketing because that's, the level up that podcasting fits into. So definitely see that correlation there too, Max. So one of the things you also have touched on a good bit is competition in the space, because a category is not a category until there are other players. Otherwise, you're just talking about your product, like we said. So what are some of the things that you think are important to do to continue to differentiate or, remain the king of that category that you've created or you're trying to lead?
Yeah, so differentiation and category creation are two very different things. And so differentiation is something that we do as a company, as a product. Category creation is something that we continue to do not for us, but for the industry, whether it's, awards or something else that is focused on not just customers, but people who are doing this and doing it right. When we do things for Sales Hacker, we talk about this category, we don't leave out our competitors. It's very important that we include our competitors. But we don't talk about the differences between the companies when we're talking about, category creation. We just talk about the category as a whole and how important it is. When Salesforce comes into your space, we're not like, uh-oh, Salesforce is coming to our space. We're like, yay, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Salesforce
Yeah.
is going to, they've got a lot of money. They're a big company. They're going to spend their money to market this thing. And if you're one of our, lower competitors, less funding raised, less employees, less revenue, you got to love when SalesLoft or Outreach or, inside sales or Salesforce throws money at the category. You got to love that because you get trickle down marketing. So, for them, it's amazing. That's the best thing. Go into a category where there's a bunch of bigger players. But, I think this, like I said earlier, the TAM in this space is so big where even as a bigger player, you're like, it's okay. It's okay that they exist. And that's why it's really important that you don't pick a very granular category to play in, or you diversify your product, so that you're playing in multiple categories or can create, a new category. And when you do create a category, you have to make sure that category it's almost like it's slick and it's customer focused, not about you and not old school. Like if you look at a company like Bizzabo, for example, Bizzabo is an Eventbrite competitor. They're a conference ticketing solution. They're probably at the very beginning of category creation. I look at them, we're a customer, really like their platform. I think there is like a Series B or something like that. So they're really right at the point where, they got product market fit. They've got the pricing down. Like now it's time to go. So they're probably at the perfect point to start figuring out like, all right, how are they going to, do their category creation? And they can go into the, ticketing bucket and directly put themselves into the category of Eventbrite and the rest of these guys. But that's boring. It's old school. It's not customer focused. Like, okay, you're a ticketing platform. Like, I don't even know what that is. Or you can go into like the experience that the customer has when they purchase tickets. And that's smoother. That is new age, modern, and customer focused. So if you're sitting there and you're Bizzabo and you're like, okay, we can go into this existing category of like a ticketing solution or whatever it's called, or it's like a experiential event marketing or something like that. Like that is a lot smoother. That's something you can build hype around. That's something you can start building a category around. That's something where there's a lot of players in where the TAM is pretty big because it's not just ticketing. It actually expands you into a lot of different things. So it's just something to think about when you are getting into, what's my category going to be? How am I thinking about this? And do I care about differentiation or do I really care about just making sure that like this is customer focused and I can market around it? And I think it's the second. It's how is this customer focused and can I talk to this audience in a way where they're going to be responsive?
Yeah, absolutely. What are the shifts going on in their lives that where your product fits into and then looking a level up from there? I love that point, Max. I love the point about looking at competition in your category or in the category that you're creating in a different light. It's not a zero-sum game. And the increased competition, as you pointed out, can be a good sign, not a negative sign. I think that's a great takeaway for folks to be thinking about as they look over their shoulder in the category that they're trying to create, where things that they might be worried about could actually be positive signs in the right direction. This has been a great conversation, Max. Thanks for coming on the show again. We're now approaching episode 900, so don't blame you for not remembering episode 153. So it has been quite a long time. You mentioned obviously the domain that you guys were able to get with salesengagement.com. People can find out about what you guys are doing there. But other than that, what's the best way for them to reach out to Outreach or connect with you if they have any follow-ups or want to stay connected with you after hearing this, Max?
Yeah, best way to catch me is on LinkedIn, Max Altschuler, just my name. I think I got like 26,000 followers or something like that on there now. So I post fairly often. I'm pretty responsive. as long as it's not, you're not trying to pitch me with some generic bullshit. But other than that, that's the place to go. And then obviously Outreach.io is our company, and salesengagement.com is the category site.
Awesome. I love it. Max, thanks for coming on the show today, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know, all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.